headaches are disorders that are underestimated in any way, underdiagnosed, underrecognized. I think there is an urgent need for a political recognition that this problem exists.
När jag var av med anfallen så insåg jag hur mycket ett liv egentligen kan vara och att jag inte har sett det eller inte förstått det och ingen annan runt omkring mig heller har förstått det. Det kändes som att jag hade blivit bestulen. Alltså det var både en ilska och en sorg. I juni så prästvigs jag. Jag tänker på mina 18 år med studier så vet jag inte egentligen om jag är galen eller om det är fullständigt genialt. Jag väljer att tro det senare. De flesta studier är ju på helfart. Och jag har ju fått kämpa för att liksom, pussla ihop så att det har blivit liksom halvfart för mig. Och, ja. Oftast så är det ju så att man kan bara trycka in. Liksom, människor bara gör det. Men jag då med min diagnos och mina problem kan ju inte, alltså det blir den här gränsen som man då övertrasserar hela tiden. Så det här att få slåss mot det hela tiden, eller verkligen, du måste komma ihåg dina gränser, Anette. Du får inte övertrassera dem om du ska hålla. Insikten om hur det är att leva med kronisk sjukdom, att inte få hjälp, att bara se det här. Vad är det här nattsvarta? Kan jag hjälpa en enda med det jag vet eller det som sitter i min kropp? Liksom, så är det ju mödan värt.
So headache associated to depression doesn't come up. So I repeated the search with headache secondary. There are more than 200 types of headaches recognized and classified in the International Classification of Headache Disorders. Some of them refers to secondary headaches, where headache is a symptom. It's just a symptom of a disease that may be very serious or maybe trivial, like a cold, for instance. In some other cases, headache is a disease that is made of recurring attacks. And in that case, we talk about primary headaches. We have migraine, we have tension type headaches, we have cluster headache and trigeminal autonomic cephalalgia. And the most frequent types of headache is represented by migraine, which, by the way, is one of the most disabling diseases. And migraine is, as I said, common. So if you take 100 women and you put them together in a group, you're likely to find that 15, 18 of them suffering from migraine. And 30 to 40% of this group will have more than 5 attacks per month, which means that they are likely to miss, not to be able to live fully 5 days of their life each month.
Ofta så tänker man på migrän som bara lite huvudvärk. Men det är det absolut inte. Det är det lilla egentligen, själva huvudvärken, säger jag. Men just hos mig är det ett migränanfall för mig. Jag har migrän med aura. Kronisk migrän med aura. Och det börjar, alltså, det är inte alla migränanfall som börjar med aura. Men om det börjar med aura, så ungefär en halvtimme innan så kan jag känna eller uppleva synproblem. Jag får flimmer liksom, framför ögonen. Konstig, som om jag är jättelång, alltså för sådana tunnelseende kan man nästan säga. Som man tittar i en kikare på fel håll. Som om jag blir 10 meter lång helt plötsligt. Och sen går det över och sen kommer det huvudvärken. Och illamående. Alltså huvudvärken är ju så stark, men allt det här sitter ju även i kroppen. Det blir illamående, svag, fullständigt svag och matt i kroppen. Alltså orkar inte. Och alla ljud, alla ljus, allt liksom. Vid ett riktigt illa anfall så klarar man inte av någonting. Mer än att lägga mig in i sovrummet, kallt på huvudet, mörkt för ögonen och tyst. Och ta migränmedicin då naturligtvis, för att det ska lindras.
The things that is not often understood about migraine by the lay community, sometimes even by other physicians outside of neurology, is that, as I said, migraine is a disorder of the central nervous system. So it is not only a headache being the cardinal main manifestation of this migraine disorder. But in addition to headache, during the pain phase, there are many other symptoms, such as we know, sensitivity to light, sound, nausea, vomiting, disturbances in emotion, and so on. But these disturbances also happen during times outside of the actual headache attacks. So having a migraine brain means that one is affected not only during the time of an actual migraine headache, but one has migraine being affected at other times. So today, as you know, in New York, it's been very fluctuating weather with this, it looks lovely, but it's diffuse light that's making us squint. Everyone on the street is walking like this, and those with migraine are experiencing disturbances in light perception, in sometimes other symptoms, nausea, maybe even without a headache. These are the days when we get extra phone calls, because living with migraine can be extra challenging, not only in the times of headache attacks, but in other times, in other surrounding headache attacks.
Så, är ni hungriga? Jag har ett minne från när jag gick i småskolan på lågstadiet. Att jag drabbades av plötsligt magont och liksom jätteskarpa smärtor och illamående. Naturligtvis trodde jag att jag var magsjuk, och det trodde ju min mamma också. Det gick väl över ganska snabbt, skulle jag tro, och det dröjde inte så länge förrän jag drabbades igen. Men det var samma sak, det var ändå försatt att det var magsjuka. Den där rädslan, jag kommer ihåg rädslan för att det skulle hända igen. Den var ju ständigt med, och det har det egentligen alltid varit. Jag minns att vi var hos läkaren med mig. Att mamma var hos läkaren med mig. Och jag minns att jag blev röntgad liksom vid flera tillfällen. Och då, de röntgade liksom allt. Njurar och mage och tarmar och liksom vid upprepade tillfällen. Men där har jag liksom aldrig hittat någonting, naturligtvis. Så för varje sån grej som, nej, det är ingenting. Det är inget fel på henne. Det blev en del av min identitet och har alltid varit. Ända fram tills jag fick diagnos, får jag nog säga. Och det formar ju en på alla sätt. I ung vuxen ålder så upplevde mer huvudvärk men mindre av det magunda faktiskt. Och på sätt och vis, och det var ju fortfarande ingenting som jag kopplade ihop alls.
My first experience with migraine was right after my son was born. And I started to experience a lot of dizziness and whipping vertigo and not knowing where this was coming from. So I sought care and was referred to a neurologist. And unfortunately, he thought it was something in my head and thought I needed to go see someone and talk to someone. And that really made me step back and shut down and didn't talk about it anymore. And it wasn't until about 2019 that I was catapulted into a completely different life of chronic migraine. I became completely dysfunctional. I could not function in day-to-day activity. I had to take a short-term leave of absence from work. I could not drive. It felt like I was on a boat going back and forth 24 hours a day. I had double vision. I couldn't look at a screen, so I couldn't work, obviously. And it was very scary because no one at this time was telling me anything. Migraine had not come up or as an indication of anything. It wasn't until 9 months later of seeing multiple specialists traveling all over, hours away from my home, that I was finally diagnosed with vestibular migraine, chronic migraine, and shortly thereafter, migraine with aura. I found my family and friends not understanding, not listening to what I was trying to explain to them about migraine, and that learning about migraine was something new to me as well. I was one of those individuals that thought it was just a headache. It was a severe headache and pain that someone needed to retreat to a dark room. And what I know now, after being with the right specialists and care treatment, is that I have had migraine since childhood. It presents itself very differently in childhood. Things like tummy aches. I had unexplained tummy aches all the time, felt nauseous all the time, car sickness and chronic ear infections, and those were migraine. And while I may not have experienced that going through my teen years or in college, obviously migraine came back when I had my first son at age 30. And then fast forward to 2019, and I went completely to chronic migraine. And when I explained this to people out in the community or out in work, the typical response was always, I get those too. You realize they're not even listening to you, to what you're really trying to share with them. So you tend to pull back and retreat.
People with migraine, we know, are very likely to hesitate to seek care. And this can be due to a variety of things. One is they are reluctant to have it be revealed that they have the disease. It's discredited by the public in general. It's discredited and maligned by coworkers and their employers. And to seek care is to identify that this is a problem that requires care. Another reason why people often hesitate to seek care is that often there's a limited amount of expertise to be able to care for this. Migraine receives very scant attention during medical school or during residency for primary care, or even actually during neurology residencies. And in the United States, headache doctors are very, very uncommon. There are fewer than 1,000 who have received credentials and accreditation for this, which means that being able to find expertise is very hard. And so people don't bother. They don't think that they're going to get better, and they're told that it's not a consequential problem for them to try to address.
We asked, does your family understand and accept that you have a headache? just 15% of the patients told us, yes, my family accept it and understand it. So about 85% don't. And this is a huge number. And this also reflects, I think, the way of how we treat patients according to the specific headache. Because we see, especially here in Austria, we have the problem that people or GPs and doctors do not put patients as early as possible in a prophylactic treatment regime. So they only treat the headache, just the headache. But migraine is not just headache, it's an episode lasting 1 to 3, 4 days whatsoever. And the burden of the disease is huge. Headache is a disease, or headaches are disorders that are underestimated in any way, underdiagnosed, underrecognized. So we have a lot to do for the future to bring us forward. Besides all this basic science, besides all these possibilities of acute and prophylactic treatment, we have to understand more and more the patient's view. So, and I think that we should a little bit more go into detail what affects these people most. Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it some kind of sleep disturbance? Is it some kind of depression? Whatsoever, all these psychosocial facts around this headache episode or migraine episode.
Har ni varit ute hos kaninerna? Inte nu. De här anfallen som jag fick när min dotter då hade fötts. Det blev ju mer utdragna anfall, det blev mycket längre. Det blev som att jag blev sjuk, alltså influensa och maginfluensa samtidigt. Men den här frossan och skakar hela kroppen och man skulle kunna beskriva det också som nästan panik- och ångestattacker. Fast det inte var det, utan det var i samband med migränen och så. Mådde fullständigt riktigt skit. Alltså. Som nybliven mamma så är det ju klart att det blir svårigheter att ta hand om sitt lilla barn när man mår så här. Och jag är så glad att jag hade min mamma och pappa som kunde ställa upp väldigt mycket och hjälpa mig. Man behöver lite självförtroende som nybliven mamma. Och det kan jag ju säga att det blev jag av med helt när det var så här. Och sjukvården inte kunde hjälpa mig igen. Och jag kan ärligt säga att jag funderade mer än en gång på att jag inte ville leva längre. För det var... Jag tänkte att min dotter skulle ha det bättre utan mig. Bara en mamma som bara liksom ligger ner och inte liksom duger till någonting.
Hi, Miss Perez, how are you doing today?
Not so well.
I know, I'm so sorry. Migraine is truly, in large extent, a disease of women. Yes, it affects men as well, and it affects women about 3 times more commonly than men. But the true burden of disease, that is how frequently the attacks happen, how much it affects life, and what living with migraine is like, is really focused in women, and particularly in women of reproductive age, that is women who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s. That is when migraine peaks. That is when 1 in 4 women has migraine. And a great percent of those women have migraine 4 or more days a month. And a percentage of those women has chronic migraine, which is 15 or more days a month. And many of our patients here at the Montefiore Headache Center have daily headaches that are sometimes intractable for months, though they're on many, many therapies. So migraine really burdens women in very, very specific, very challenging ways. Taking life and opportunities from them and days of life in the time when they need to be most productive, during this youthful time when they're having children, having multiple jobs, and really can't lose time. Is this it? If you can imagine, a young woman, a young mother of 2 children who works a job or 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. We certainly have patients like that who can take maybe 1 day off, get babysitter, get help with children, take 1 day off of work, and if that can break in 1 day, that migraine, then she can get back to recovery, because half of this is also how quickly do you recover from the migraine attack. But if it's a day after day, 5 days later, 5 days of missed work activities, home activities, engagement with children, or 5 days of slugging through all of those activities presents a particular challenge that is really hard to navigate. And next spot, 1, 2, 3. I can't help thinking that if migraine affected men at the same rate that it affects women, that at this point we would have much better treatments and much more robust research programs available.
Well, migraine has a huge stigma, and first of all, I think everybody thinks that they know what a migraine is, but nobody knows what a migraine is. Everybody thinks that migraine is just a headache, a little bit stronger. Only 1 week ago, I was talking to one man who said to me that we were making this up, that migraine doesn't exist. It's something that we are creating, and it's not real. So people, the society in general, doubts about migraine and doubts about what this is. And it is true that it's very invisible. Nobody can see us when we have a migraine attack. We are hidden in our room. We are hidden even in our bedroom. But people think that this is just a headache like they have, the one they have when they have a flu, or they are hunger, or they have, or they are tired, or something like this, and that we just are weaker than the others. And I have to tell you that my feeling is that we are much more stronger. And I want to tell people with migraine that they are extraordinary people, because we have been suffering migraine for 21 centuries. At the same time that we have been working, going to a school, going out with friends, going to university, running a house or a home, having a family, trying to find a job, working with everyone, and on top of that, we have been suffering those migraine attacks without any help from anyone.
The stigma for migraine begins early in life, and it's actually passed from parent to child. So a patient of mine who is currently 58, she recalls that her very earliest memory was of her mother at age 4 years old, when she was 4 years old, saying, "Whatever you do, never tell anyone about your headache, or no one will want to be your friend." Her mother had chronic migraine, and she was providing what she thought was a appropriate guidance to protect her daughter from experiencing the problems that she had during her life. But as a consequence of this advice, she hid migraine. She hid migraine throughout school. She did not as well as she might have done during school. She always thought she was stupid, and the teachers tended to reinforce this. And it wasn't until she actually reached college level, and she was able to get to college, that she received the diagnosis of migraine. And finally got some adequate care for it. She's been successful enough to be a person who's had a career in social work, but she always wonders how much further she might have gone had she not had this continuous burden of migraine. We surveyed a couple of thousand people who did not have migraine about their attitudes to how often they felt that such and such was true for people with migraine. And we found that a third or more of people carried stigmatizing attitudes, sometimes, often, or very often, with respect to that migraine was not a consequential disease, or that migraine really was the fault of the person who had migraine due to their own unhealthy behaviors, or that people with migraine use migraine to avoid commitments. So both the people with migraine and the people without migraine carry a reservoir of these malign attitudes which impact dramatically people's quality of life and their ability to be effective and productive in their lives. So we don't really understand the whys of why migraine stigma arose and why it's been so persistent. And there are a number of ideas or theories about this. A primary theory is that this has to do with the fact that migraine is 3 times as prevalent in women than men, and that this is a related issue to sexism towards women's diseases. And there is some truth to that, but it's a little bit nuanced and a bit different from what most people assume. So findings from a different study that I was involved with some years ago indicated that people who have migraine are just as likely to claim or experience that they have these stigmatized attitudes if they're men with migraine versus women with migraine. But men without migraine are more likely to carry the stigmatizing attitudes than women without migraine. So there is a gender difference here, but it's really on the side of the people who carry the stigmatizing attitudes. The other major thing that I think is likely important is that headache is a discredited source of pain. People regard headache as being inconsequential. The use of the word headache in the English language is polarized to medical pain, so head pain, migraine, and also as a metaphor of annoyance. And as people learn the language, the more they hear the use of the word headache as annoyance, the more likely it is to discredit the medical condition of headache. And since migraine is always identified with headache, it discounts or discredits migraine. And we have some findings that suggest that this is true, that people who don't have migraine discount the severity of migraine compared to people who do experience migraine. And that having an appreciation for the severity of migraine can correlate with the presence of stigmatizing attitudes for people who don't have migraine.
Så träffade jag en bra allmänläkare som förstod att han inte kunde så mycket om huvudvärk och som remitterade mig till en neurolog. Och jag fick komma till den här neurologen och han satte diagnosen migrän och jag fick då prova migränmedicin för första gången. Och i maj 2017 så hittade jag via Huvudvärksförbundet som jag då är med i, hittade jag reklam för en huvudvärksskola som skulle börja i september. Där fick jag verktyg liksom för att förstå kring den här sjukdomen, att det är en neurologisk sjukdom. Det är inte du som gör det. Det finns triggerfaktorer. Det kan finnas massor triggerfaktorer. Men det är inte du som orsakar din sjukdom. Det är inte du som orsakar dina anfall. De liksom kommer. Bara det har varit jättestort för mig och hjälpt jättemycket. Har mått jättebra sedan dess. Men det är också tack vare alla de här verktygen som jag har. Och att jag har liksom kommit lite... I och med att jag inte har så många anfall så har jag kommit ifrån. Liksom jag kan se vad som är sjukdomen och vad som inte är det. Och det kunde jag inte på så många år. Och det är ju, idag så är det ju det som hjälper mig att hålla mina gränser.